to everybody. So we're gonna do some slides and then we're gonna do some talking. So I'm Silvana and with me is Celeste. Hopefully in a second you can see us because here we are. So I hope that the sound is better. We had some sound issues and some delay issues, so we stopped and we're up again, and I do hope that we'll get it right now better. So Celeste, the floor is yours. Say just hello and hopefully they can hear you better.
I'm going to hold my microphone up to my mouth and hopefully you can hear me better. So anyway, hi, I'm Celeste and welcome to the Lift program. Today we are just offering a live, or we're trying to anyway, to discuss a little bit about the urinary system since it is November and it is Bladder Health Awareness Month. And the urinary system is a part of overall pelvic floor health. So some knowledge is power. And we hope to bring a little bit of education about the fundamentals of the urinary system to you, and then how pelvic floor exercises can influence, or what can influence the health and benefit of the urinary system if there are issues there. Shall we begin?
We're going to try to begin, yes. So I have our first slide. So maybe we're going to have some delay, but we're going to try to make it all the way to our slides and hopefully get there in time. So I have our first slide up and we're going to be discussing our urinary system as we just mentioned. And so second slide now is going to go up and it's going to be discussing the urinary system as a whole. I'm not sure, Celeste, if you can see the slides now. So can you hear
the
me?
first slide of the topic, the first text slide? I can hear you. Yeah, so the urinary system in general is a system in the body, that uses various organs to purify the blood and remove toxic waste products. So that's the primary function, but it also manages and adjusts the pressure and volume of body liquids. And as part of the process, it removes excess water and toxic residues from the body through the urine.
That's it. So our second slide is talking about the different parts of the urinary system as a whole. That it's not only the bladder that's involved. You have the kidneys also, right? So can you see our second slide now, Celeste? I'm not sure if
I can do.
Perfect.
Yeah, I see it.
Perfect. So we're just going to do like a quick, in very short topics, just to make sure that everybody knows the urinary system and all the different parts of it. So to kidneys, to ureters, a bladder, and the urethra, right?
Yes. So it's although we don't have any pictures with the information, if you are interested in seeing a picture, we do have PDFs that have the actual pictures that go with the different parts. We just didn't want to get too weighed down in anatomical detail. We just want to provide information here.
Okay, so I'm just going to go to the third slide, and actually we're just going to mention what's the path of the fluids through the body. So of course, the fluids entrance will be via eating, drinking, an IV, of course, if it's needed, and etc. And then the liquids are absorbed. The fluid passes through the digestive systems to the bloodstream. After that, there's the filtering process. So from the blood, we want to filter the liquids, and then we're going to store them. The storage actually is the bladder itself. And of course, the liquids, we go to the bathroom to urinate to get some of them out of our body, right?
Correct.
Correct.
In terms of there are other ways that we might excrete
Yeah.
fluid from our body, but the primary process is through urination.
Yes.
Right. So sweating would be something else. That's
yes, of course.
Yeah.
So also, we're going to talk about the storage, since this is November, and that's November is a bladder awareness health month. And of course, the storage will be via our bladder. So the storage will be of fluids in the bladder. The proper volume of the bladder is from 400 to 600 cc's. That's like the normal.
Right. So in cups for the US, it's about 1.5 to 2.5 cups, which is actually quite a lot of fluid. So
yeah,
I think it's 400 cc's is about a cup and a half.
Yeah, and a lot of questions that some people used to think, do I go too much to the bathroom? Maybe not enough. How do I know if I really go a lot, or maybe it's just normal? So it's good to know that drinking 2 liters of liquid will get you 4 visits to the bathroom, and that's a norm. So if you drink a lot, you're gonna go more. And if you don't drink enough, you're just gonna go less. So just to make it like the statistic of the how many
sort of a norm.
Yeah, right? What's the norm, so we can judge if we're we're okay, or do we go too much or not enough. Okay, so this is like a statistic to get everybody in the same system of how much drinking and how much going to the bathroom is the norm. Okay.
And it's not a perfect science. This is just an approximation and a guideline. It's a baseline.
Yeah. So we're going to just go a bit more in depth to how the bladder is has 2 different actually type of like filters or like 2 ways in which we can control the release of the urine. Okay, so the first one,
this is the important part,
will be the voluntary one, and that would be the first one, and it's controlled by the brain, and it bypasses the spinal control or the reflex. So for example, when a baby is born and he does not have a voluntary control, we need diapers, right? So as we age and we start to control our bladder, and that would be our voluntary control, we don't need the diapers anymore, and we can just decide when do we want to go to the bathroom, and we can also hold it, as we say, right? So that's Absolutely. The first one, and that would be the voluntary, okay? But we do have another one that it's not voluntary, and it's the inner one, and it's just opens as the bladder gets half full. Okay, so it's a reflex, and this is something that it's controlled by the spinal cord or signals, and it's just something that we don't really control, but it's also good to know that the brain is the more voluntary control of it, and it should be more in control than the second, the autonomic one, right? So let's say we have brain control, and we have spinal cord control. The spinal cord control is a reflex. We're just born with it, and we learn to have the secondary or more advanced control, the brain control, as we age, and that would just, be around, infants, that they learn to control the release of the urine, and that's the normal way, okay? So actual urinating will happen when both of them are open, okay? So we need the reflex one to be open. That would just happen when we have full bladder. And then we have the upper control, the brain control, that will open when we decide that we want to go to the bathroom. Okay, so that's actually how the system's supposed to be working. So we have our lift program. Overall pelvic floor functions are included, and also the control, hopefully, of the muscles of the pelvic floor will help us to train and have a better quality of control during urination. Okay?
Yes, I think the most important thing to emphasize, and it's with other parts of the body as well, there are many involuntary functions that we have. But the voluntary ones that do have muscles that are controlled voluntarily or can be influenced by action and programming, so to speak, we can definitely try to improve. So any type of improvement we can offer is a benefit from where we started if there is a problem. So anything with muscle control that we can influence, such as the voluntary portion of the bladder control, we want to definitely work on that. And some of the issues with that also have to do with some of the muscles of the pelvic floor itself being either too tight or too weak, in addition to the actual urinary system and function. So we want to try to impact that control specifically so that the bladder can better do its job.
So we're just going to go to our next slide here, and we're actually going to just discuss, would it be the pelvic floor muscle itself and their function. So of course, one of the things that we want to do is improve the support of the organs with the muscles of the pelvic floor, and also the pelvic floor muscles help with the control of the urinary system with the sphincters, as we just discussed, and also helps us with stability, and of course function during sex, that it's a normal thing. So all those functions are pelvic floor muscle functions that we can do a lot of work to improve, actually. And that would be just by using our muscles.
Correct. So the next slide is muscle control, and as we said, there are voluntary and involuntary muscles. So we're working on the involuntary, on the voluntary system, and we want to work multiple layers of actual muscle tissue, because there are always deep and superficial layers of muscle tissue. So the goal is to influence both of those layers, not one or the other, but to get them in a balanced harmony at their best function.
Yes. So additional functions of the urinary has to do with norms, like culture, and also it could be, for example, there are countries or cultures in which it's okay to urinate in public if you feel the need. And that's not an easy thing to change when you have a culture that's different. Also, habits can be changed but you have to work to
Look at
change
that.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, we can change also the attitude that we have and belief that we have about certain things. Let's say some people would say, oh, it's really not good for you if you hold it before going to the bathroom. But that's not always necessarily correct, because you don't want to be rushing every time that you need to go to the toilet, or just be thinking, oh, I can't go out because I don't know if there's a bathroom nearby. And so you also have to think about certain beliefs that we all have.
And those things are very personal and are things that have to sort of be managed individually and maybe questioned. Once we start questioning some of our habits, attitudes, or beliefs, or even the culture that we're in, then we can maybe have a different perspective about what is an improved solution for us to try. If there's something that maybe we recognize is something that can be changed a little bit for the
Yes,
better,
I do.
kind of
I
work
do
on that. But
agree.
until we question it, yeah, we have to question it in ourselves, and then maybe look for alternatives and ways that we can make changes. Yeah.
Yes. So let's say that when we want to address a urinary issue or a problem, we need to first understand the system. Second, just make a note, if we do really have a problem. So if we drink 2 liters and we go 4 times to the bathroom, that's not an issue. It's not going too much. So first of all, we need to acknowledge that, okay, there's like a standard for going to the bathroom. Okay, so maybe we exceed that, but then we have to think about, okay, so do we go a lot to the bathroom? And when we do so, do we urinate a big amount, or the
Small
normal
amount,
amount,
small volume.
or
Right.
small volume? So sometimes that could be affected, as we just said, from different habits or belief.
Right.
If I
And just
believe that,
awareness.
yes, and if I believe that just not going to the bathroom the second I feel that I need to, because I was told it's not healthy, let's say. So of course, I have that thought in my mind, and I will just rush to the bathroom, and maybe there's not really any kind of problem there. It's just a belief that I have to go immediately. So that's something that also has to do with how much I go and the belief that I have. Of course, working with the muscles of the pelvic floor will help to strengthen, since we already know that some of the function of the pelvic floor has to do also with the control there. So better muscles will always get us better results in that kind of activities.
Yep. And sometimes things that influence the volume or frequency of urination or occurrence have to do with something like childbirth, where there's been an impact on the pelvic floor muscles, maybe a tear somewhere in the pelvic floor region. And it is something that over time can be addressed and corrected with the proper awareness and diligence. And sometimes there's an overindulgence in caffeinated beverages or other types of beverages that stimulates the bladder. So that's something to recall also, that what we are consuming, if it's not just water, if it's other types of liquid, they have an influence on the bladder function, and sometimes they're stimulants and will cause the bladder to act more even when it wouldn't normally. And those beverages could be alcoholic beverages, it could be caffeinated beverages, will have that influence as well. So I think
Yes.
developing awareness is really the key. So maybe, your awareness process is, how often do I urinate, and the volume of what I'm urinating, what is my volume, and then what kinds of liquids am I consuming, have I consumed, and try to get a gauge of what your norm may be, and then you can have a better sense of if it's actually a problem or not.
Yeah, and I also want to say, since I and also Celeste, we're movers, and of course, our goal is to get everybody moving. We do Pilates, but it's everyone with what he or she likes to do, and I think that we both want to encourage everybody to move. So we would encourage you, even if you have some issues with the urinary system or the pelvic floor, you actually can do a lot to improve your quality of life through movement and exercise. And we do have a special program that is appropriate for urinary issues, like leakage or any other issues. And you can be doing exercise in a safe and a very productive way with all kind of issues in the urinary system or the pelvic floor. So sometimes people would say, well, I have, an issue and I have some leakage and I don't want to do too much exercise. Maybe it's going to get worse or something like that. And we actually try and help people to understand that's not the case. Actually, exercise will always be a beneficial thing to do, and you can do a lot of work. Yes, and it is correct that sometimes we have to pick and choose the right position and the right exercise. For example, we can start and do exercise not in a standing or a seated position, more in a supine or sideline position until we get better, and then we can fight gravity a bit more. But I would always say you do need to move. It's only a plus, never a minus, right, Celeste?
Absolutely. So the saying is movement heals, and it does. So the Lift program at www.the-lift-pro.com is where our programs are, and we have an overall pelvic floor health program, but then we have a number of mini programs, one of which is specifically for bladder health and bladder support. And the other thing for people to realize is that leakage doesn't only happen with aging. It doesn't only happen, meaning with estrogen changes and aging. It doesn't only happen with delivery and childbirth. I actually have a rather young client who has not had, she's in her 30s, who has not had children and had issues with her bladder and with leakage. And it had absolutely nothing to do with some of the standard or what people would think would cause a problem. It really had to do with a lot of bony alignment, the way her bones were aligned and the way the muscles were contracted to support the way the bones were aligned. And as she worked through the process of doing the exercises to open up the spaces and allow her pelvis to actually be in a more anatomically correct place with her hips and her spine, her legs, everything working in a better alignment, it actually went away. And it was something that she had no idea why she had it, that there was no particular course of action that had been prescribed for her. It was like, you're just gonna have to live with this type of a thing. You could do some therapy or this and that, but actually it was the movement, going to the movement heals. It was the movement process and the corrections of her alignment that made, in her case, that made the leaking stop. And that's an interesting story because it's quite different than what a lot of the norms are.
Yes, and as you said, it's not always an age thing, but sometimes it is due to estrogen changes. And again, I would recommend do not stop moving or doing exercise because you have maybe some pelvic floor issues or bladder health issues. Actually, all research shows that exercise is just gonna help you no matter what. So sometimes if you have an ongoing problem, of course, you should always see a physician and just make sure that you're okay from their point of view to start doing your exercise. But eventually, it's going to be only a plus for getting your muscles to be stronger and your whole body. And Celeste just mentioned other issues that you may have sometimes. Could be back issues or hip issues or other pelvic floor ones. So it is really just, you just need to move the body and get everything going. And with time, maybe we can do a progression to more advanced positions and do more standing and sitting and not only supine or sideline or quadruped. And we do have a variety of programs for every issue.
But anyway, even with aging, you have to keep moving. I mean, a lot of us don't want to move, but you have to keep moving because you have to work even harder at it sometimes. And that's the part that people find maybe discouraging. It should actually be encouraging, because the more you're able to move and the longer you're able to move, the better your quality of life and your longevity is. And as soon as you really like stop and say, I can't do this, there's never an I can't. It's, there's always a way. There's always a modification or a way to do it. And that's what people should really always keep in mind. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that we cover this issue for today. I hope everybody could see us and hear us okay.
And hear us.
Yeah. Hopefully.
And send questions and topics of interest to us, please, through the Facebook page or by email through the website. You can send us questions, ask us for things you'd like to learn more about, and that's the best way for us to bring useful information to you.
Okay, so we're gonna say goodbye for today, and hopefully see you in the future. So
we will do.
Have a nice day.
Yes, goodbye.
Goodbye.